dense hush fell over the dried-up lake. He had already destroyed their villages and homes. There was no telling how far he'd go to gain respect. A winged monkey brought the masked man a rag, and he wiped the food off his clothing. "From this day forward, you will no longer be the people of your pathetic kingdoms, but the property of this empire," he announced. "Disrespect me again, and I will not show you the same mercy as your weak kings and fragile queens. Anyone who dares to cross me will not only lose their own lives, but will first watch as I take their families' lives as well." Children throughout the lake began to cry, and their parents held them tightly. It seemed the darkest days were still ahead. "I've brought you all here to witness the birth of a new era," the masked man preached. "But before we achieve a new future, the ways of the past must be destroyed, and the leaders of the past are no exception." The masked man gestured to a large wooden platform below the balcony on the lawn between the palace and the dried lake. A very tall man in a long black cloak climbed to the top of the platform and placed a large wooden block in the center. A dozen flying monkeys pulled a wagon out from behind the palace. It carried all the former kings and queens of the fairy tale world: Cinderella, King Chance; Sleeping Beauty, King Chase; Snow White, King Chandler; Trobella, Empress Elvina; Rapunzel, Sir William, and even the young princesses Hope and Ash. All the royals had their hands tied together and were blindfolded and gagged with strips of white cloth. The tall man on the platform withdrew a large silver axe from inside his cloak. The civilians began screaming and shouting in horror once they realized the purpose of it. The masked man was going to have the royal families executed. Although they couldn't see, the kings and queens knew what was happening by the sound of the terrified crowd. They fought against their restraints, but they didn't budge. The civilians desperately tried to climb out of the dried lake to save their rulers, but they were kicked back into the mud. The card soldiers stood around the lake's perimeter and locked arms, forming a wall to block them. The masked man laughed wildly at all the terror he was causing. Winky soldiers pulled the royals out of the wagon and pushed them up the steps to the platform, then stood guard around it. The cloaked executioner sharpened his axe as he awaited his cue to begin. "Start with the men, then the women, then the children," the masked man ordered. "Your Majesty, if you would please do the honors." The Queen of Hearts stepped to the edge of the balcony. With enlarged eyes and a devious grin, she looked down at the distressed royals like they were a delicious snack. "Off with their heads!" she roared. The lake erupted in protest. The women cried desperate pleas for the execution to stop. The men yelled profanities at the masked man for being so cruel. The frightened royal families huddled together in a corner of the platform and trembled. The executioner selected King Chance to be his first kill. He grabbed him by the arm and dragged him to the block. Cinderella and Hope screamed through their gags when they realized he was no longer standing beside them. The executioner forced Chance into a kneeling position and placed his head on the wooden block. He held the axe above the king's neck and practiced swinging. With each swing, the civilians gasped, fearing it was the fatal blow. Finally, the executioner raised his axe higher into the air than he had raised it before. The pleas and screams from the helpless bystanders multiplied. The royals knew it was only a matter of seconds before the king lost his head. The executioner brought the axe down, but as he did, he spun his body so it sliced the platform floor instead of the king's neck. Suddenly, the floor caved in, causing the executioner and all the royals to fall through the platform and disappear from sight. It was so unexpected, the panicked crowd went silent. This couldn't have been part of the plan. "What just happened?" the masked man screamed from the balcony. "Get them out of there!" Just as the Winky soldiers went to inspect the platform, 3 large horses burst out from inside it. Porridge, Buckle, and Oats had been under the platform the entire time. They were pulling a carriage with the executioner and all the royals safely aboard. The platform had been a large trap door. "No!" the masked man screamed and leaned over the balcony as far as he could to get a better look. To his horror, he saw Goldilocks.